Hello everyone, welcome to Dumpstat Wisdom. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. This video is a game guide for warrior class in Dragon Age Origins. This is just a starter's guide. This is not going to be a level by level guide for a warrior class. I'm just going to go through the starting character creation of the warrior so that beginner players will have a decent starting. If you like this video and if you want me to do more videos like this for rogue and mage class, or if you want me to do a level by level build guide for a specific warrior, please let me know in the comments and I will see what I can do. Now let's start with the video. Now at the character creation, the first choice you're going to make is your gender. You can be either a male or a female, and this has no effect whatsoever on your gameplay mechanics. The only thing this affects are your romance options and a couple of minor dialogue choices here and there. So it doesn't matter what is your gender, just pick whichever one you want. Now coming to races, we have three races: human, elf and dwarf. All three races get some minor attribute boosts. Humans get +1 dexterity, +1 strength, +1 magic and +1 cunning. Elves get +2 willpower and +2 magic. Dwarves get +1 strength, +1 dex, +2 constitution. But most importantly, dwarves get a 10% chance to resist hostile spells, which is basically 10% spell resistance. This, of all the attribute bonuses, this is the most useful. So if you want to build, if you're trying to min-max your warrior, then dwarf is the race I would go, because the 10% spell resistance is very useful. Not to mention dwarves have some of the best origin stories in the game. Now, if you don't want to be a dwarf, I suggest a human noble. Mainly 2 points. One is human nobles get the best use, the beginner friendly introduction to the game. The starting origin story, the setup, the character motivations, everything are very simple, very straightforward, and you will have the lore of the game will be given to you in tiny little bits. Unlike a mage who gets the entire lore about fate and spirits dumped on their heads, a human noble is a very beginner friendly origin. That's, if this is the first time playing through Dragon Age Origins, then I suggest playing as a human noble. Or in our dwarf, because dwarves have the best starting attributes, and dwarves in Origins are my favorite race, so I'm always going to recommend dwarf for you. Class is going to be a warrior, obviously, and you have two origin stories. One is a dwarf commoner, the other is a dwarf noble. The main difference between the origin stories is your prologue. So before you get a specific point in the story where all the origin stories converge, the first 1 hour of the game differs based upon what is your origin, what is your background. But once the prologue is over, rest of the game will mostly remain the same except a few dialogue options based upon your background. Sometimes you come back to the areas where you started in your background and you will have some unique character reactions based upon your choices. But other than that, gameplay wise, there is not much difference between the various backgrounds. This is mostly a role play thing. Now, Dwarf Noble will get some starting gold, chances to earn some starting gold, and a very decent beginner's armor at the end of the prologue, which which will be useful for a warrior. But again, nothing game changing here, so pick whichever background you feel suits your character more. I always go with Dwarf Noble because this is my favorite origin in the entire story. Of all the 6 origins, I love Dwarf Noble. I think, in my opinion, this is the best written, best origin story. But pick whatever you want. Like, this is a role-playing game, so play your role.
Greetings.
Next is just appearance, just Just play around with all these options, see what looks good for you. Next is attributes. Now there are 6 attributes here, and there are only a couple of attributes which your warrior will be focusing on. First is strength. Strength increases your weapon damage, strength increases your melee attack, strength increases your physical resistance check, and you need 42 strength to wear the best armor to equip the best weapons. If you are a tank warrior, you want to stop at 42 strength. If you are a DPS warrior, you want to max out strength as much as possible. Second is dexterity. Dexterity increases your attack, increases your defense, and for bows and daggers, it also increases damage, and finally, it also increases your physical resistance check. The main thing you are concerned about with dexterity is the increase to defense. Every 1 point of dexterity increases gives +1 to your defense. Defense is basically your chance to dodge incoming attacks, both melee and ranged. If you are a tank warrior, dexterity is your most important attribute. You want to max it out as soon as possible. If you are a DPS warrior, invest enough dexterity to get the talents that you want. Sword and Shield want 26 dexterity, dual weapon warriors want 36 dexterity, 200 warriors do not require any dexterity at all. So if you are a DPS warrior, just hit those limits and invest everything else into strength. If you are a tank warrior, get 42 strength and invest everything else you can into dexterity. Willpower. Willpower increases mental resistance. Give +5 to mana if you are +5 to stamina if you are a warrior and rogue, and +5 to mana if you are a mage. Depending upon how you build your warrior, if you are a tank, you do not need much willpower. The base stamina you get from leveling up will be enough. If you are a 200 warrior or a dual weapon warrior, you will be using a lot of active abilities, and so you will need some willpower there. Not much, because every time you level up, you get a hidden bonus to stamina and health. Health and stamina automatically increases a bit every time you level up, so you do not need to invest too much into willpower. Somewhere around 20 to 25 will be more than enough, and then you equip some stamina regen boosting gear and you will be good to go. And at later levels, you will get passives that will give you stamina every time you kill someone, and as a DPS warrior, you will be killing a lot of enemies, and every time you kill an enemy, you will be regenerating some stamina. So yeah, 20 to 25 is the willpower you want. Next is magic. Magic increases your mental resistance, your spell power, which is going to be how efficient your spells are, and how efficient your potions are going to be. This is completely useless to you. You are a warrior, you are not going to be casting any spells, you don't need magic. Skip it. Don't put any point in it. This is a dumb stat for you. Next is cunning. Cunning increases your mental resistance. It increases your armor penetration. If you are a rogue and you have a specific passives unlocked, it will provide you damage. If you have specific specializations as a rogue, it will provide you a lot of boost. However, you are not a rogue. You are a warrior. You don't need cunning. You need the armor penetration from cunning. Cunning doesn't boost your damage or anything. The only thing cunning is useful for you is to unlock persuasion and intimidation dialogue options, which require max of 16 cunning. At 16 cunning, you can max out your coercion skill and unlock nearly every single dialogue option in the game for your origin. So I suggest getting cunning to 16 and then no more in it. Now, constitution. Every point in constitution increases +5 to health. It increases your physical resistance, and I believe that is all it does. Now, in my opinion, constitution is the most useless class in the entire game. It is useless to warriors, it is useless to rogues, it is useless to mages. The only build where I will consider putting a few points into constitution is a blood mage, and even then it is not required. Constitution is the most useless attribute in the entire game, mainly for two reasons. Reason number one, you already get a +5 to health every time you level up. Okay, putting a point into constitution will give an extra +5, which is not really needed. You're already getting an increase to health every time you level up. Point number two, it doesn't matter how high your health is, if your defenses are shit, if your spell resistance is shit, you're going to get killed. You are not going to tank in this game using your health. If you want to survive enemy attacks, if you want to take damage, if you want to tank, you want to maximize your defenses and you want to maximize your spell resistance. So Constitution might seem like it will help you in surviving tough battles, but it will not. No matter, even if you put every single point into Constitution and you have like 50-60 points in Constitution, enemies are still going to kill you. Just ignore Constitution. This is one of the biggest traps for a beginner player, because someone who is starting the game for the first time will invest a lot of points into Constitution thinking it's going to help them survive, but it will not. It will just get them killed, especially if you are playing in higher difficulties. So no matter what build you are, even if you are a blood mage, no matter what build you are, what class you are, what specializations you have, never invest any point into Constitution. To make the matters worse, you have a lot of Constitution boosting gear in the game. There are rings that will provide +10 to Constitution. There are gear that will provide +5, +4, +5 health regen. So you don't need Constitution to boost your health and health regeneration. There are gear to take care of that. So don't bother about Constitution. At level 1, I suggest you put all points into strength, no matter whether you're going into a tank or a DPS, because at low levels, this +5 to strength will give you a big bit of a boost to attack and damage, and it's going to help you. Let's move on. The next is skills. There are 7 skills total, and the only thing that are really important for you are the first one here, coercion, which is going to be your persuasion and your intimidation skills. This requires 16 cunning to maximize all 4 points. So that's why I suggest getting 16 cunning here. Once you get 16 cunning and unlock all the 4 skill points here, you are going to pass every single persuasion check and every single intimidation check in the game. The next important skill for you is combat training. Each point in combat training unlocks a new level of weapon skills. If you have 0 points into combat training, you will not be able to put a single point into any of the weapon skills. Now if you have combat training maxed out, you can put a point into any weapon skill that you want, provided you meet the prerequisites. This is a really important skill for warriors. Warriors need to max this ASAP. Your first 8 skill points must go into combat training and coercion. Do not bother with rest of the skills until you have these 2 maxed out. Now here you can see that I have 2 points into combat training already. That's because I am a dwarf noble warrior. Depending upon your origins, you might have only 1 point in combat training and 1 point into something else. All warriors will have 1 point in combat training. If you are a dwarf noble or a human noble, you will get a 2nd point in combat training. If you are a dwarf commoner, you will get 1 point into pickpocket. If you are a Dalish elf, you get 1 point into survival, and I believe if you are a city elf, you will get 1 point into coercion. So even if you are looking at from a skill point of view, even here dwarf, noble, and city elf is the best starting races for you, because neither of them will waste any skill points. But that's such a minor thing. I'm just saying it for your reference, whatever. So I suggest putting 1 point into coercion at the beginning, because you already have 2 points into combat training, and you do not really need a 3rd point in combat training until you hit like level 8 or something, when you get the ability to put points into tier 4, tier 3 weapon skills. So at starting, I suggest you get 1 point in coercion. At level 3, you will get 1 more skill point. I suggest you put it into improved coercion here, and then come back and focus on combat training for the rest of the game. Once you max out combat training, go back and max out coercion again. That's generally how I play. 2 points in coercion is enough to unlock most of the dialogue options from early to mid game. Higher levels of coercion is only needed at really high level persuasion checks. Next are weapon talents. This is what your build is going to be based on. These are the main bread and butter of your build. It doesn't matter what warrior you are, I suggest you always put 1 point into powerful skill here. Now what powerful skill does is, it gives you a plus 50 to your health, which is not really that important. It's decent at low level, but by the time you reach mid level, you're not going to really care about that plus 50 health. But more importantly, it also reduces the fatigue penalty for wearing armor. In this game, when you are wearing heavier armor and when you have a lot of sustains active, we are going to have something called fatigue. Basically, fatigue is a penalty to your stamina cost. If you have 10% fatigue, all your abilities are going to cost 10% more stamina to use. So if an ability is going to have cost 100 stamina, you have 10% fatigue, it's going to cost 110 stamina. Now at high level, when your warriors are wearing massive plate armor and you have a bunch of sustains active, you can easily hit something like 40-50% fatigue, and you're going to run out of stamina really fast. You just use a couple of weapon talents and your stamina bar is going to go empty. Especially if you're a dual wielding warrior or a two-handed warrior, because these are the DPS warriors that are going to use a lot of abilities and they need a lot of stamina. So getting powerful will help you mitigate some of the stamina issues you are going to have at mid to end game. This is a very useful ability. I suggest you get it at level 1. At early levels, the health boost will keep you alive for a little longer. At mid to late game, the reduced fatigue penalty is going to help you with using more abilities. So I suggest putting 1 point in this and then putting the remaining 1 point into any of the weapon skills that you want to focus on. There are 4 here: dual weapon, archery, weapon and shield, two-handed. I suggest picking one weapon style and focusing on it. Now you might think, I'll put some points into dual weapon, I'll put some points into archery, so I start the game by shooting someone with my bow and then switch to melee weapons when they get close. That sounds good on paper, but in the game you will not get enough points to max out both the trees. And you need to max out a tree to get the most benefits out of it. Some of the most powerful abilities are locked at tier 4. So I suggest and also there is rarely ever a scenario where you want 2 different kinds of weapons. Maybe at early level you might want to start a game with a bow and to draw enemy aggro and then switch to melee weapons, but that does not require any investment into archery 3 for that. So you don't need to put points into archery or dual weapon to use the weapons. You just need to put points into them if you want to use those abilities. So you can be a dual weapon warrior and you can still have a bow equipped in your secondary weapon slot, and you can start the combat with a bow if you want. Though I do not suggest it because it gets really cumbersome. But if you want to play like that, just play however you want. This is like I said earlier, this is a role-playing game, so play whatever build you want to play. My suggestion is pick one style and stick to it, maximize that style, and select your specializations that will match and complement that style, and that's the way to make a good build. Now let's go through these 4 weapon styles. The first one is dual weapon. Dual weapon warriors are the best DPS warriors in the game. Their single target damage matches that of a well-built melee rogue. Not at low levels, but mid to high levels they are going to hit really hard and they are going to hit really fast. Their auto attack damage is incredible. They have very powerful abilities. They have very good AoE damage. Warriors do not get that many area of effect damage abilities, but dual weapon warriors are really good at that. They get one AoE ability at level 1 and then they get one more at level 12 when they unlock the 4th tier abilities. If you want to be a DPS warrior, dual weapon warrior is the way to go. Also, dual weapon warriors require 36 max dexterity. This master combat training, sorry, dual weapon mastery, sorry, this requires master combat training and 36 dexterity. So at 36 dexterity, you are going to have very decent defense. So you are going to dodge a lot of incoming attacks as well. So they're really good at doing the damage, and they're decent at being an off tank. However, dual wielding warriors do not have any option to mitigate enemy knockdowns, stuns, or paralyzes. You're going to spend a lot of time either getting stunned or getting knocked down on your ass if you're playing a dual weapon warrior. So you have to build your party around that. You do not want your dual weapon warrior to be the main tank. You do not want your dual weapon warrior to go first into the combat, because if they go first, they're going to pull a lot of aggro, they're going to get CC'd, and they're going to get killed. Dual weapon warriors are off tanks and main damage dealers, and that's how you want to build them. You get 36 dexterity, you get 20 to 25 willpower, and you put everything else into strength. Getting strength to around 50 by end game is a decent level, and that will give you a lot of damage and decent survivability. At first level, I suggest you put 1 point into dual weapon sweep. This is a really good ability. This is going to be your bread and butter ability. This will hit all the enemies in front of you in a cone, and it's going to hit them twice, and it's going to do an increased damage. Means if you have a weapon in your hand that does 10 damage, this skill is going to hit everyone in front of you for 12 damage, and it's going to hit them twice. That's almost 240% or 250% of weapon damage in a cone in front of you. So everybody there, if you have 2-3 enemies in front of you, you're going to hit everybody, and that's a really powerful ability at low level, and it remains useful even at end game, where you have huge mobs coming at you, and you can use this to do a very solid damage. This is going to be a bread and butter ability from level 1 all the way to level 24 when you are fighting the archdemon. Now, some origins, specifically Dwarf Commoner and City Elf, will start with a dual weapon sweep already selected. If that is the case, then I suggest you put 1 point into dual weapon training. This is only if you already have dual weapon sweep already selected. Now, dual weapon training, what it does is, normally when you put a weapon in your offhand, it will not do full damage. It will suffer a damage penalty. If it does 7 damage in your main hand, in your offhand it will do something like 6 or 6.5 or something like that. Dual weapon training will remove that damage penalty. And since you are a DPS warrior, maximizing your damage is going to be your most important thing. So mitigating that damage penalty is really great. So put 1 point into dual weapon sweep, and the next time you get a ability, a talent point, put it immediately into dual weapon training. Yeah, that will be enough for you to survive the first couple of levels until you get the more powerful skills here. Next is archery. Archery, in my opinion, is the second worst build you can have in this game, especially archer warriors. The only thing that is worse than an archer is a shape-shifting mage. That's not to say that archery is bad. Archery is very powerful. At late game, you will do a lot of auto attack damage. You will be attacking a lot faster. You will have decent crit attacks, and you are going to do a lot of damage. But your other builds will do a lot more damage, and they're going to do a lot more CC and support. Archery doesn't have any of those things. The reason is this: every single ability here has really long attack animations. It will take a few seconds for you to use any of these abilities. Like if you look at Dual Wield Warrior, you try to do a dual weapon sweep, he will immediately attack everybody in front of him, doing damage to them. If you want to use the spinning shot ability on an enemy using your archer is going to take a couple of seconds to line up the shot and then shoot at the enemy. In Origins, attack speed is the king. The faster you attack, the more damage you do. And the more damage you do, the more viable your build is. Archer abilities take up a lot of attack animation, and the effects they produce are really mediocre. So if you want to play an archer, you are not going to be using any abilities. You are just going to have one or two sustains active and you are just going to auto attack the entire game. Not only do you have less interaction with the class abilities, but they also do very low damage when compared to other fighting styles. And if you want to play an archer, just go a rogue and be a rogue archer. At least rogues get a decent damage and crit boost. They have a lot of abilities that will improve your archery, especially if you go a bard specialization. Rogue archers are slightly better than warrior archers. Now this is only in Origins. Once you get into the Awakenings DLC, archers become god tiers. They are immensely boosted in Awakenings, giving them one of the highest single target damages in the entire game, capable of one-shotting every non-boss enemy in the game, and even killing bosses in a few hits. In Awakenings, archers are gods, but in Origins, archers are the rogue archer, warrior archer, and then shapeshifter mage. These are the three worst builds in Origins. Viable? Sure. You can finish the game on Nightmare difficulty with those builds, sure. But they do not have the same power level as the rest of the builds. That's what I'm saying. But if you still want to be an archer, if you still want to role play, or if you're playing at lower difficulties, then I suggest you put 1 point into melee archer. If you want to be an archer, this is the most important ability you need to have this ability if you want to survive as an archer. That's because if an enemy comes into melee range and hits you with your weapon, you are going to get interrupted. Interrupted means you will not be able to take any action. You will not be able to drink a potion. You are not going to be able to shoot back at him for a second. And if an enemy is at a melee range for you, he's going to keep hitting you again and again and again, which means you're going to get stun locked there and you're going to die. Unless you have melee archer, this will stop enemies from interrupting your archers. You can keep shooting at enemies even if they are in melee range. This is very useful. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. You can still drink potions when you're getting attacked at melee range, but you will not be able to attack the enemy back if you do not have melee archer. If you do not have a melee archer and an enemy comes up to you in melee range, you will have to run away and kite them. You will not be able to stand there and take the hits unless you have melee archer. So this is the most important ability for an archer in the entire game, and it's a level 1 single point investment. If you want an archer, get this ASAP. Now if you are a Dalish elf background, you will also have pinning shot already unlocked for you. But again, archer active abilities are just crap. Get melee archer, and the second ability you have, put it into rapid shot to increase your rate of fire. These two are the abilities we want as an archer. For the first 2 levels, get melee archer and then rapid shot. And until you come into really high levels and stack up a lot of crit chance, you're not going to bother with anything else in this entire tree. You are just going to be an auto attacking machine. You don't want to bother with any of these active abilities. Some of these might seem good when you read them, but considering the effect they have and the attack time it requires to line up the shot and shoot them, none of these are really worth it. Only melee archer and rapid shot, and then put get whatever else you want. These two are the main things you need to have. Now coming to weapon and shield. Now weapon and shield is the spec to go for tank warriors, but that doesn't mean they cannot do damage. They can do really good damage, but they will do damage, but not on the same level as a two-handed warrior or a dual weapon warrior. But if built right, weapon and shield warriors will have a lot of survivability and will have decent single target damage. And you need 26 dexterity if you are a weapon and shield warrior, because that is what where is it? Shield mastery. Yeah, shield mastery right here. It requires level 12, 26 dexterity and master combat training. If you want to build a damage dealing weapon and shield warrior, you need to get 26 dexterity, 20 to 25 willpower, and everything else into strength. And for starting skills, if you see here, I already have shield bash unlocked. That's because I'm a dwarf noble. Dwarf noble warriors and human noble warriors will already have shield bash unlocked. Shield bash is a really good ability. It knocks down an enemy unless they pass a physical resistance check. At low levels, your defenses are crap, so you cannot tank efficiently, and your attack is crap, so you're not going to hit reliably or do much damage. If you are playing on hard nightmare difficulty, you need to have an ability to control enemies. You need CC. If you are not CCing your enemies will walk up to you, they will just murder you. It doesn't matter how high your strength is, what your defenses are at. Until you have maxed out your build, you got a best gear and you have really maxed out defenses and spell resistances, you are not going to be able to tank properly. You need crowd control, and that's one of the drawbacks of playing a dual weapon warrior. They do not have good crowd control abilities. They have one stun and one stun at level 4, and they get one knockdown at level 12. Dual weapon warriors do a lot of damage, but they cannot CC enemies reliably. Weapon and shield is very good, very decent at crowd controlling single target damage. They get shield bash at level 1. No, shield bash will not work reliably on enemy warriors because they will most of the time pass the physical resistance check. But this will nearly always work on enemy mages. So at low levels, running up to an enemy mage and using shield bash to knock them down and then murdering them is one of the best options you have available. Unless you get to some mid-level and your mages get some anti-magic spells like Glyph of Neutralization or Mana class. At low levels, you want your warriors and your rogues to CC your enemy mages and kill them as soon as possible. For that, shield bash is very useful. Shield bash will also work reliably. My tongue is it works reliably against enemy rogues as well, because rogues do not have much physical resistance and you can easily knock them down and you can kill them. So there is a great CC against enemy rogues and enemy mages. Against enemy warriors, it's not going to be that reliable. They will most likely succeed the check. Also, a lot of enemy warriors are going to be immune to knockdowns, especially if they are two-handed warriors or weapon and shield warriors, because you get sustained abilities that give you immunity to knockdowns. But against rogues and mages, this is an excellent skill to have, very useful. Now, if you do not have shield bash unlocked, then I suggest you put your point in it and unlock it. If you have shield bash unlocked, or when you hit level 2 and you get another talent point, I suggest you put it immediately into shield pummel. Shield pummel is one of the best active abilities your weapon and shield warriors will ever have. Your tier 4 ability Assault will do more damage than Shield Pummel. However, Shield Pummel does really good damage. It hits thrice. Though it doesn't do max damage in all the hits, but overall 3 hits combined, it is a very good solid damage. And unless the enemy passes a physical resistance check, it's going to stun them. Now, unlike Shield Bash, I observe enemies failing this check a lot more often, even enemy warriors. I'm not sure why, but enemies that resist Shield Bash will fail the check against Shield Pummel and get stunned. So Shield Pummel is one of your bread and butter abilities. You're going to use this from level 1 all the way to level 24. Level 34 into Awakenings, I still use this Shield Pummel. It does solid damage and it stuns enemy for decent time. This is a great ability, Esther ability, one of the best abilities you will have as a weapon and shield warrior in this game. I suggest you beeline to Shield Pummel immediately as soon as you can. Get this by level 2. You don't need to go further down this line until mid to late game, but I suggest you get up to Shield Pummel and then focus on rest of these 2 tiers to get your defenses up, and that will give you a decent damage, CC, and survivability, everything rolled up into one. This is one of my most favorite shield and weapon and shield spells. Every weapon and shield warrior in my party will always get Shield Pummel as soon as possible, and I'll be using this. I will set up tactic for all my warriors, like self getting hit by melee weapon, Shield Pummel. That's the tactic I set up for all my warriors, and it works incredibly well. Can't say enough good things about this. This is it is an amazing talent. Get this as soon as possible. Now, finally, we have two-handed warriors. Now, when you look at the name two-handed warriors, you might think that these are the DPS warriors. That's not the case. Dual weapon warriors deal more damage than a two-handed warrior. Two-handed warrior, a single hit from two-handed warrior is going to do, by end game, if you optimize this, around 120 to 130 points of damage. It's going to take huge chunks out of enemy health. However, a dual weapon warrior with a single weapon attack will do 60 to 70 points of damage by end game. Now, if you just look at damage numbers, you might think two-handed warrior is better. However, two-handed warriors hit really slow. They have some of the slowest weapon attacks in the game. By the time your two-handed warrior make a single swing, your dual wielding warrior with dual strike and momentum activated will hit with both the weapons twice or thrice. Let's assume twice. A single weapon attack from dual wielding warrior will only do 70 points of damage. But if you are hitting them with dual strike, which means hitting them with both attack at once, that's 70 plus 70, 140 damage. And you're going to attack them twice before two-handed warrior can do a single swing. That is 280 points of damage. So by the time a two-handed warrior swings once and do 130 points of damage, your dual wielding warrior has hit them twice with both weapons and he does double damage. For that reason, dual wielding warriors are better DPS. Also, dual wielding warriors have 2 area of effect abilities, while two-handed warriors have only 1 at level 12. Having said that, two-handed warriors are still incredibly powerful warriors. They do not do as much damage as dual weapon warriors, and they do not have as much survivability as weapon and shield warriors. However, what they have is decent damage, decent survivability, lot of active ability, lot of ways to debuff enemies. They have abilities that will stun enemies, they have abilities that will reduce enemy attack, reduce enemy damage, armor, and they have AoE knockdown. AoE knockdown, you need two-handed, at least in Origins, two-handed warriors are the only ones who get a area of effect crowd control ability other than a mage or a Templar. So if you are a mage, you will have a lot of crowd control abilities. If you are not a mage, you will need to be either a two-handed warrior or a Templar specialization to be able to CC groups of enemies. And two-handed warrior does this. So they have decent damage. They tend to get they tend to have heavier armors equipped faster than weapon and shield and dual wielding warriors, because two-handed warriors do not have any dexterity requirements. They only have strength requirements, which means they will be putting every single point they have into strength, and they will be meeting the strength requirements for armor faster. So your two-handed warriors are going to be the first warriors in the entire party who will get the ability to equip massive armors. So that will give them some decent survivability, decent damage, decent ability to CC enemies, and most important of all, they have a sustained ability here called Indomitable, which will make them immune to stuns and knockdowns. This makes two-handed warriors incredibly difficult to crowd control. Enemy rogues and enemy warriors cannot CC your two-handed warrior. Only mages casting something like Crushing Prison or Paralyze can CC your two-handed warriors against enemy. There are fights in this game where there will be 12 enemy archers in the back line who are going to shoot stunning arrows at you. That's going to stun your entire party and deal massive damage and slaughter your entire party before you can even get a single attack out. Two-handed warriors are immune to that stun. They will still take damage, but they are immune to that stun, which means they can take the hit, check a potion, and then keep on attacking. There are points where my entire party is slaughtered, my mage is dead, my rogue is dead, Alistair is lying dead, and Stan with Indomitable just kept going and slaughter the enemies and just won the fights for us. It happened so many times where Indomitable just saved the day for me. Especially when you are fighting huge amounts of enemy archers, they will stun your party continuously back to back. You need some way to mitigate stuns. And two-handed warriors is the only warrior who can get an immunity to stun. Dual wielding warriors cannot get any immunity whatsoever. Weapon and shield warriors can get immunity to knockdown. That's it. And they need a tire. They get immunity here when they have shield wall and shield expertise. They need to be level 12 and get shield wall and then shield expertise to get immunity to just knockdowns alone. But your two-handed warrior with just one single point, tier 2 point, will get complete immunity to knockdown and stuns. This Indomitable is the reason why two-handed warriors are powerful. Without Indomitable, there is literally no reason to play two-handed warrior. Everything two-handed warrior can do, your other characters can do, except immunity to stun. Which means there are so many fights where your entire party gets crowd controlled and your two-handed warrior is the only one who can move and attack and drink potions, and they will win the fight for you when it doesn't. And they also have really good damage, not as much as dual weapon warrior, but still better damage than weapon and shield warrior. And they have lot of disables, knockdowns, debuffing enemies. So weapon and shield are your tank warriors, dual wield warriors are your DPS warriors, two-handed warriors are your support utility warriors. That's what they are. They are for support, they are for utility and off tanking. Now, for the first point, I suggest you put it in Pummel Strike. For the same reason I suggested putting points into Shield Bash in Weapon and Shield. Pummel Strike knocks enemies down. At low levels, CC is what you want. Your damage is shit. Your defense as a two-handed warrior is really dog shit. They start with low defense. Two-handed warriors will not invest any points into dexterity. You do not have shield to provide a defense bonus, and you actually have sustained abilities which will lower your defense if you activate them. they give penalty to your defense. So your two-handed warriors will have really low defense, so they cannot tank for long, but they are decent off tanks next to your weapon and shield warrior. And yeah, Pommel Strike will help in that. At low levels you can knock down enemy. In Origins, being a tank means being able to control battlefield either by taunting enemies or by knocking them down or by stunning them. If you are just standing there and just taking the hits, you are not tanking, because enemies will lose interest in you and they will go hit your back line. So you need to taunt, you need to control enemies on the battlefield, and two-handed warriors are really good at that. So I suggest you put 1.2 to Pommel Strike for the CC. And one thing I observed is Pommel Strike seems to work a lot more reliably than Shield Bash. I do not know why. There are so many times where I can knock down enemy warriors with Pommel Strike while I cannot knock down them with Shield Bash. I don't know, but Pommel Strike seems to land a lot more reliably than Shield Bash. You will not be using Pommel Strike much once you get to mid to late game, but early game this is going to be an incredibly useful ability. So I suggest you get it. And unlike weapon and shield archery or dual wield, there is no origin story in the entire game that provides a free talent point in two-handed, which just sucks, because two-handed seems like the best, like lower perspective one of, like you would think that a dwarf warrior will have a point into two-handed, but no, they get a point in weapon and shield, not two-handed. I don't know why. So there is no origin story which will give you a free talent point here at the beginning. So you are always going to start with Pommel Strike here. And that's it. That's all the warrior abilities. And yeah, I'm not going to talk much about the rest of the abilities or specializations or anything like that, because this is just supposed to be your beginner guide to give you a best starting you can have at level 1. If you guys like this video and if you want me to do a more in-depth guides for a specific builds, let me know. I will see what I can do. And that's all for this video. Thank you for watching it, and if you like the video, please like, and if you really like the video, then comment and tell me how much you like the video. It just makes me giddy like a schoolgirl when someone comes and comments on one of my videos. And if you do not like my video, then say that in the comment as well. Comment on how much my video sucks, how I'm not making any sense, or I'm a big dumb idiot. My point is comment. Okay, please leave some feedback, and if you want to see more videos like this, please let me know and subscribe, all that crap. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a nice day and happy gaming. Enjoy the game. Bye.